So drawing character faces, we need to always understand that we are following the same principle of drawing the human face. And that means looking at the center line of the face, the level of where the nose, mouth, chin, and ears would be. So looking at a smiling face, we're going to exaggerate some of the features, especially in terms of rounded shapes of the facial features when the face is smiling, so that we can lift the cheekbones a little bit higher as we smile. We're going to close the eyes a little bit more, a big open mouth, and a very simple rendition of the ear. All of these attributes account for character drawings in terms of your look and feel you want the character to have, as well as what type of emotion you want them to express. So with a character that is slightly more on a profile angle, we're going to have again a big open nose showing with the cartilages, open eyes to show awareness, lifted brows, and a small little smirk smile, edge of the cheeks towards the top part of the head and ear, and then the hair on the sides of the face. So if we look at a different angle and we arch the head slightly to the back, if we look at the features of the nose, mouth, ears, eyes, and chin, we're going to see from the nose building upward a little bit more of the bottom part of the nose. We're going to have the eyes a little bit more open and looking upward, so that we can arch the mouth a little bit more open to give a sense of either shock or fear or a type of excitement, and that all depends on how you approach your features of the face. But it's important to understand that even though we simplify the shapes, they all align in terms of angles to one another. But as simple as we want, we can make a face in terms of a very rounded shape from the top of the head to the neck, and a slightly more slender arch of the head and neck. So with the first angle, we start with the nose, and I'm going to arch the eyes very low down, and I'm going to have a very despondent look on the face over here, but I'm following the angle and shape that I have indicated at the top. So a very rounded shape from the top of the head to a very broad neck towards the collar where the shirt will be, and I'm going to maybe just include a small little hat at the top. Now for the face on the other side, we know that we've got a very elongated face, so very long center line going down, looking at where the features are, but a very slender face as I've mentioned, and also looking at how we arch it to the back. So I'm going to make a slightly older person in this character, and I'm going to have a sharp little nose, long fulcrum going down towards the mouth. I'm going to have a very big top lid embankment of the eye and bottom lid embankment of the eye, just to show some age and to show some parts of the facial features more heavy in relation to one another, and that always gives some age or approach in emotion to a character. So I'm looking at the hair, very simplified look and feel, almost like a little librarian female character that I'm building here, with some big glasses, nicely done hair, and then the coloring at the bottom. So I'm going to arch the edges of the cheeks a little bit more, and one can see that if we look at the features of the character, small little renditions of change to a particular feature can change the emotion of a complete character. Just if you look at the top edges of how we built the mouth, just with tweaking how the teeth look, a completely different look and feel and connotation already sinks into us how a potential character can look. So if we look at also arching the mouth a little bit more open, we can play around with the stylization of teeth, also looking at the tongue, very sharp, or also looking at cringing on teeth. But features differ, and we can stylize and simplify features to different characters, looking at how each character has a specific trait of emotion or look and feel about them. So if you look at how the ear looks, we can start to refine the ear and simplify the ear more and more and more. That all depends on what type of character you want to use, but very simple line work, especially when you start to do coloring later. But if you look at just emotions of characters, looking at Simple renditions of the mouth, very simple line work for a smile, closing the eyes, lifting the brows a little bit, a natural smile. Opening the mouth a little bit more gives a little bit of a sense of shock, so we're going to make the eyes a little bit opener and rounded, and then lifting those brows up a little bit higher to give that sense of shock or fear. We can also give a different connotation with open eyes if we look at a different slant and angle of the mouth to give a little bit of a sense of disgust, but also then slanting the eyebrows a little bit lower gives a different emotional connotation. You can see I always start with the nose with any character just because it's the center point of the face, and then around that it's easier to build features. So again, if a character smiles very nice and big, you want to arch those eyes slightly to the sides just to indicate where those cheeks would have been, showing off some teeth for a nice big Colgate smile. But now if you want to cringe as well and bite that bottom lip, you can show some renditions of the teeth and also indicate the eyes that slant downward at the top with the brow very close towards them, just to give a sense of anger or unease. Again, with a different connotation, we're going to have a sense of, let's say, boredom in this case. We're going to have a slightly arched mouth to the bottom and the eyes very low at the top to show a sense of boredom. Also, looking at a sense of, let's say, unhappiness. We can look at rounded eyes, small little mouth, and the lids halfway. So that despondent look and feel looks in relation to eye features, especially the lids halfway down. So now we can look at another quirky little approach with the tongue sticking out and playing around with one eye shape in relation to the other, one round and one slanted. So looking at eyes, one brow slightly lifted, we can look at a sense of awe or a sense of awareness, attributes of looking at mouth features. So that unsurety, if you look at arching that mouth slightly open, gives one connotation to the side, and if you open up a very small portion of the mouth, it gives a sense of excitement or awe. You can also have the mouth pulled to the front, and you're going to have the mouth to the side, downward a little bit more to give a sense of unhappiness. So again, we can look at facial features and refine these features of looking at a female character, maybe making the eyes a little bit more open to show a sense of adolescence. So we're looking at a teenage look and feel here for the eyes, and the mouth a little bit more open to give a sense of either shock or alertness. And then we can look at the same character but a few years younger. So we have a smaller rounded nose, small little mouth, but bigger rounded eyes, and the inside structuring of the eyes also nice and big to give a sense of young female features to come through. And these same female features we can use on a young kid proportions, looking at a rounded nose, but we're going to arch the mouth a little bit higher, and then looking at the brows pulling upward to show a greater connotation of emotion. But we can play around with different characters, and the key with building different faces is understanding that you need to move away from your traditional style that you always were familiar to draw with, because I constantly change my style. So now, for example, I don't like those eyebrows that I've included, but I know I'm going to include a big top part of the head and a very slender jawline. So each attribute of a character differs, and you need to understand that you can play around with features to change those characteristics to give either a sense of likeness of a person or their type of attitude or personality traits. But fundamentally, it is understanding the proportions in relation to one another and understanding that we start to exaggerate features when we do characterizations and character drawings. And in this instance, I've got big brows at the top, small eyes, but I'm looking at a more slightly elderly person because I'm arching that mouth downward and having a small chin, but that bottom part of where that mouth arches, I'm making a little bit of a pocket and a little bit more of a fleshy part on the sides to give some sense that skin is softer on that part of the face, dragging downward. And again, looking at how you can play around with how the ear fits to a specific character. So maybe now I'm looking at making a big long nose, and I'm maybe going to have a sharp nose in this sense with small little eyes, and maybe want to arch the mouth maybe downward a little bit more, showing a big top row of teeth, and then looking at how I want to play around with the inside of the mouth. But I know I'm going to have a slightly longer edge of the neck from the chin downward, and a rounded head and some big hair coming in at the top, with a very refined look and simplified approach for the ear. So all these attributes are aligned to one another in terms of stylization, but they all relate in terms of features. And the more you play around with how you look at the openness of an eye, the openness of a nostril or a mouth, all give different connotations every single time in terms of what your character will be doing in a specific setting, or just how you want the identity of that character to be captured just on one pose. But it is fundamental that we understand that there's a shift between different characters, especially just with the look and feel of the nose to eyes, that certain attributes relate and certain attributes don't. But we can look at, for example, here again, having a big top lid for the eyes and a big smile. We can make a very big rounded body shape here, and we've got a slightly unease smile coming through, yet we started off with a plain smile, but just with a different attitude of the eyes, we give a completely different connotation to the character as a whole. Again, very small eyes and a slightly longer arch of the mouth pulling downward also gives a greater sense of unease, unhappiness, but specifically more so of a slightly older character. Open eyes, slanted top lid gives a little bit more sense of anger coming through. And then we can, for example, include a big beard if you want on the character, open area for where the mouth would be, that you will see the bottom lip. And then let's have very little hair. Fundamentally, with character designing and drawing faces, is we are able to look at specific cultures and look at the social dynamics of a culture and what they consist of and how people have understood them to be. And we can look at putting those things together in terms of features for a particular character. So if we look at building up a French character, we can look at traditional senses of a moustache, nice and curled, open eyes, low lids at the top, sharp nose. We're going to have sharp features over here for where the chin also is going to come in. Nice round part of the top part of the head towards the ear. Very slender jawline, small little beard maybe at the bottom, a little goatee. I'm going to build up the top part of the head and building up the hairline, very sleek and pristine hair, and then a little beret at the top and slender neck to meet the characteristics of that jawline, and just ending off the neckline. So these features relate in terms of a specific culture, a specific demographic, and a specific area that one needs to reflect on where characters reside. And these features, if we look at caricatures, are aided in terms of looking at how a person is portrayed in terms of a portrait, and then we can start to exaggerate these features a lot to give a comical sense to that individual. We can, for example, with this pose, exaggerate that nose a little bit more, very big arches of that brow at the top of each eye. We've got a very sharp mouth and a very sharp fulcrum pulling to the front. So we're going to arch that even more. We're going to highlight that rendition of the feature even sharper. Big ear at the side, sharp jawline that we can see, and where the cheek line is. We're going to build in the hair, very sharp rendition of the top part of the hair, a little bit spiky on the sides. But this is how we start to look at caricatures, look at a portrait and see what are the features of that portrait, and then look at how we can exaggerate the features, how we can elongate, enlarge, make smaller, arch the features up to give still a sense of identity to that character, but we exaggerate those features in a comical sense that if the portrait is away, we can identify that character even without that portrait being there. So if you look at this very famous image of Hugh Laurie, we're going to arch this face a little bit more here. We can see that it's got a very long, elongated face, so we're going to accentuate those features. We're going to have big eyebrows at the top, or the embankments rather of that, looking at how the pleats are at the top and the wrinkles at the forehead, small little mouth, but those pockets on the sides emphasize that, sharp chin at the bottom, but a bit rounded at the sides, bigger ear at the side for the angle specific, and looking at the hair, a little bit more unneat or a little bit untidy. But if we remove the portrait in this instance, we can see there is some likeness towards what we have built up. And if we consider these features of building a character, fundamentally it's the angles, the scent lines, the features, and looking at what those features are all dependent on what we want the emotion to be of that character, the personality, and in essence, the identity. So all these things come together in simple, refined shapes that are built up very roughly in the beginning and then defined with a very pristine outline that will help with tonal value at the end.